Hi 7th grade, this is our grammar lecture video for Unit 4, Lessons 3 and 4. Lesson 3 on adverbs and Lesson 4 on comparing with adverbs. This continues our video series on grammar where we covered Lesson 1 on adjectives and Lesson 2 on comparing with adjectives last time. So since this is not a new experience for you guys anymore, you should already know the usual. Please go ahead and take notes while we're conducting this lesson virtually. Feel free to take any screenshots, watch the video multiple times, and of course, as always, send me any questions that you might have via private message on Classcraft. I'm always here to help you guys. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into the lesson. And again, ask questions, take notes, and hopefully this makes sense to you guys. So last time we talked about adjectives, we said that adjectives are a form of modifier. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do like a little recap definition. Okay, a modifier is a word that adds, it's not just a word, it's a word or phrase that adds onto, supplements another word or phrase in a sentence by providing more information to it. So we use adjectives to kind of give more information about nouns or pronouns in a sentence. We don't just say, for instance, that dog. We could say that big brown dog, to kind of give us more definition, more definitively an idea of which dog we're talking about, okay? And we also talked about the three articles, a, an, and the, some of which are definite and indefinite, which tell us, okay, a cat versus the cat. There's a difference there. So modifiers in general are just words that kind of provide more context as to what kind of thing we're talking about, or in this case, in the case of adverbs, the way things are done, exactly what kinds of adjectives, and even what kinds of adverbs. So let's just go ahead and start talking a little bit about what adverbs are. So like adjectives, adverbs are in fact modifiers as well. Adverbs, and by the way, adverbs tend to be probably the most commonly confused and forgotten part of speech of the 8 that exist. A lot of students tend to forget exactly the functions of adverbs, so hopefully you understand and remember for the long haul after these notes. Adverbs are modifiers that modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. You might be wondering, adverbs modifying adverbs, that sounds intimidating. Well, unfortunately it is a little bit, but we're gonna hopefully, after today, it'll make sense. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about each of these modifications and exactly what those look like. Okay, let's start off with verb. Okay, an adverb modifying a verb. I'm going to use a sentence example here. Patricia ate her dinner quietly. Why did you just underline quietly? Well, I'm underlining quietly because quietly is in fact an adverb. Quietly is the adverb modifying ate. It's describing, it's telling us how Patricia ate. Patricia didn't just eat her dinner. Patricia ate her dinner quietly. Quietly is describing the manner in which she ate. And of course, ate is a verb. So quietly is telling us how she ate. Quietly is an adverb. Let's go ahead and now give you an example of an adverb modifying an adjective. The class is made up of very diverse students. I'm going to go ahead and put a little space here so we don't get confused. The class is made up of very diverse students. Obviously, our adjective is diverse. We covered adjectives 2 lessons ago. We know that diverse is an adjective because it's describing what kind of students. They're not just talking about made up of students, diverse students. But now we have a different word here, very. And we know that very is an adverb because it's modifying diverse, which is an adjective, and it's because it's telling us of to what extent these students are diverse. They're not just diverse students, they are very diverse students. So very is the adverb modifying diverse, telling us to what extent the students were diverse. Okay? So I need you to remember the difference between a modifier, which so far just includes adjectives and adverbs, the difference between a modifier and the word being modified. Because what I noticed with the last exam on adjectives is that there were several of you that got confused between the two, and where I asked you for the word being modified, you pointed out the adjective, which was the modifier. Okay? Please do not get the two confused. The modifier is just at this point an adjective or an adverb, and the word being modified is the word that that adjective or adverb is adding on to. So quietly is an adverb modifying ate. Very is an adverb modifying diverse. Let's go on. Now to the tricky example. Adverbs modifying other adverbs. Okay? And I've got a sentence example for you as well for this one. The news has discussed the issue somewhat extensively. What's special about this sentence is we actually have not one but two adverbs. So if I were to ask you on a test, what are the modifiers and words being modified in this sentence, you would have to tell me the following, okay? Because we have an adverb modifying another adverb, that tells us that we have at least two adverbs. So the first adverb in question is extensively. And how do we know extensively is the first adverb in question? Because it is modifying the verb has discussed. So the news hasn't just discussed the issue. The news has discussed the issue extensively. Extensively is an adverb modifying the verb phrase in this case, has discussed. But this is an example of an adverb modifying another adverb. So this tells us that we actually have another adverb in question in this sentence. And you guys probably can already see it from here. So the first adverb was extensively. The second adverb in question is somewhat, because it is modifying. What word is somewhat modifying? It's modifying our first adverb. It's modifying the adverb extensively, telling us to what extent was the issue extensively discussed. So it wasn't just discussed extensively, it was discussed somewhat extensively. Two adverbs in the same sentence, one modifying a verb, one modifying that adverb that was being used to modify the verb. So those are probably the more confusing examples. But yeah, those are the three primary functions of adverbs. Adverbs modifying verbs, adverbs modifying adjectives, adverbs modifying other adverbs. Let's go ahead and move on now into the adverb question. So last time we talked about adjectives, we went over certain questions that adjectives answer. Now let's also talk about the questions that adverbs answer. Okay, adverbs actually answer 4 different types of questions. So we're going to go over each of them. Adverbs can answer when. As in the example, a shooting star is often seen within visibility. This is an adverb. Often is an adverb telling us that the shooting star is seen when. It's often seen. Okay? So, and we know that seen is a verb and often is going with seen. So it's telling us that the shooting stars aren't just seen, the shooting star is often seen. We know that because seen is a verb and because it's answering the question of when, that is in fact an adverb. Okay, moving on. Adverbs can answer where. As in the example, the rain causes mosquitoes to appear everywhere. And that last word is our adverb. How do we know that? Everywhere is an adverb telling us where mosquitoes appear. Okay, and as in the last example, appear is what kind of word? Appear happens to be a verb. Okay, so everywhere is modifying a verb, the verb appear. Adverbs can answer how. The essay was well formulated. Okay, it wasn't just formulated. Well is telling us how the essay was formulated. Formulated happens to be a verb, so it was formulated well. Okay? And I want to take this opportunity real quick, and I mentioned well for a very specific point. I want to take this opportunity to go over good versus well. Okay? Because a lot of you are often asked, "Oh, how are you doing today?" And everyone responds, "Good." Well, to be clear, it's a common answer nowadays, but it's an incorrect answer because you can't do good. Do happens to be a verb. And by saying that you're doing good, you're suggesting that you are doing good things or you are executing good behaviors, but you can't do good. Okay, it's physically impossible. You can do well. So to clear the argument, good is an adjective. Now that we've gone over adjectives, I can explain this a little bit better. Good is an adjective, well is an adverb. You can have a good dinner. You can have a good result on your test, but you can do well. You can study well. You can formulate essays well. Okay? Well is an adverb, good is an adjective. Moving on. Adverbs can answer to what extent? And this is the last question, and probably the one that tends to be most confusing. Sally was terribly sorry she made a mistake. Terribly is an adverb. And I want to clear this common misconception that a lot of teachers sometimes suggest, that adverbs, the trick to identifying an adverb is finding a word that ends in ly. Well, I'm here to tell you that not all adverbs end in ly, because you can see on this entire page of 4 different adverbs that the only adverb ending in an ly is terribly. We have well, we have everywhere, we have often, which are all adverbs, and none of them end in ly. And also, if you have a word like ugly, which ends in an ly, well, are you going to say that that's an adverb? No, it's an adjective. You can't take out the ly from ugly because ugh is not a word. And adverbs can end in a multitude of letters. So, yes, a lot of them do end in ly, but avoid the misconception that all of them end in ly, or even most of them. Okay? Adverbs can answer to what extent. Sally was terribly sorry she made a mistake. Terribly is telling to what degree or how sorry she was. Okay? To what degree Sally was sorry. She wasn't just sorry, she was terribly sorry. Okay? So it kind of gives us more effect in that regard. Okay? Go ahead and take a screenshot of those notes. And we are moving on now into the big rule of to what extent adverbs. The big rule of adverbs that answer to what extent is to avoid overusing them. Okay? Avoid overusing adverbs that describe to what extent. Especially words like very and really. You don't need to say something like, especially next year as an 8th grade writer, instead of putting avoid, let's put don't do this. I was very excited to hear we had a new puppy at home. Yeah, that might be your emotion. You might be very excited to hear you have a new puppy at home. But try to replace combinations of a to what extent adverb and an adjective with a stronger adjective. Okay? If you find yourself tempted to use a very or a really, like really excited or I'm very happy, try to find instead another adjective that is a stronger form of the one you want to use and drop the very and really altogether. So instead of doing, I was very excited to hear we had a new puppy at home, do something like, I was ecstatic to hear we had a new puppy at home. Because in high school, words like very and really are often disliked and frowned upon because they're thought to weaken your writing. And in a way they do. If you just use very coupled with a weak adjective like excited, it suggests that you're not taking the opportunity to try to use fresher, more grade appropriate vocabulary words to describe exactly what you're feeling. So instead of doing the lazy route of using very and really coupled with another adjective that you might be using in elementary school, try to do a little bit of research and find stronger adjectives. You can always look up stronger form of excited, and I'm guaranteeing that ecstatic will come up. Okay, stronger form of happy, content, stronger form of sad, depressed. Okay, there's a multitude of stronger adjectives that you could look up in all those cases. Okay, the last point I want to go over for lesson 3, and then we're going to try to make lesson 4 very quick to avoid a half-hour video, is position of adverbs. Okay, adverb position is very important. You need to be very careful about where you place adverbs. Okay, adverbs that modify adjectives or other adverbs should be as close as possible to the word or words being modified. So best thing that you could do is always try to place your adverb as close as possible to the word you're modifying, especially in the case of adverbs modifying adjectives or other adverbs. In the example, the ending to the story was quite accurately predicted. And here we have what kind of case? Adverb modifying other adverb. Because quite is an adverb modifying accurately, and accurately is an adverb modifying predicted. It wasn't just predicted, it was accurately predicted. How accurately? Quite accurately. Adverb modifying other adverb, you need that quite to be very close to the word accurately. Let me give you another example. The beaches have suffered from somewhat careless treatment. Here we have an adverb modifying an adjective. It somewhat is going along with careless, and careless is an adjective describing what kind of treatment. Treatment is a noun. Okay, so somewhat is an adverb modifying careless. But to kind of go along with what I'm saying of being careful of where you place the adverbs, let's use this example. The beaches have suffered from somewhat careless treatment. In the current way it's written, somewhat is telling us that it is somewhat careless treatment. We don't know it's not extremely careless treatment. Right now at its current level, it's somewhat careless treatment. But if we were to disobey this rule of being careful where we place adverbs, in the cases of modifying adjectives or other adverbs, we might be tempted to say something like the beaches have somewhat suffered from careless treatment. Which, yes, is a sentence, just like the first one, same length, we're just moving the word somewhat, but it changes the meaning completely, because now we have an adverb modifying a verb. And it's telling us that the beaches have only somewhat suffered. It's not anymore that the careless treatment is somewhat careless. We're saying that it's somewhat suffered. So that changes actually, even though the length stayed the same and we moved one word, it changed the meaning of the sentence drastically. Okay? In the cases of adverbs that modify verbs, position isn't as important. As in the examples, let's use the adverb soon. Soon, the team will be led by a new manager. And of course, if we're using soon here, we're using it as a transitional word, so we do need to have a comma there. Soon the team will be led by a new manager. Wants me to put LED, L-E-A-D, LED, both work the same. Soon the team will be led by a new manager. We could also say the team will soon be led by a new manager, same length. And we can also say the team will be led by a new manager soon. All three sentences, same length. Three different positions of the adverb soon. Guess what? It did not change the meaning in any case. So position isn't as important when modifying verbs, but definitely important when adverbs are modifying adjectives or other adverbs. So the no-fail method for all of this is just always to ensure that your adverb is as close as possible to the word that it is modifying. That wraps up lesson 3 on adverbs. This point in the video, we're going to be now turning into lesson 4, which is on comparing with adverbs. And this is very similar to lesson 2, which was comparing with adjectives. Very, very similar notes. Look at me overusing the word very, and I'm telling you not to do that. So pity me, Mr. G. But just to get the point across, I'm going to try to make this video quickly done as possible so that you guys can watch it quickly, ask me questions as always. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Comparing with adverbs. Whoops, did not mean to do that. Let's talk. Okay, so comparing with adverbs. Remember with adjectives that we have 3 degrees. Okay, we have 3 degrees of adjectives. We also have 3 degrees of adverbs. We have the positive degree, which is its base form. The comparative degree, which is 2 or more things. I'm sorry, 2 things. And we have the superlative degree, which is 2 or more things. Okay? The same rules that we apply to adjectives and adverbs, the same rules that we apply to adjectives, we want to apply to adverbs. So let's go ahead and remind ourselves of those rules. Okay? Rule number 1, adverbs and adjectives that are only made up of 1 syllable, and some adverbs that are made up of 2 syllables, you need to add ER or EST to the comparative or superlative form, respectively. Okay? So, we can say something like, I arrived soon, bringing back the word soon, but Kelly arrived sooner, because now we're comparing 2 people, Kelly and I, so we're using the comparative form of soon. But Kelly arrived sooner, and Mrs. Thompson had arrived soonest. So now out of 3 people, 2 or more, we now have the superlative degree, which is soonest. Okay? And soon is a 1-syllable adverb. So as such, in the comparative form, we're adding ER. In the superlative form, we're adding EST. Comparative form, add ER. Superlative form, add EST. Okay? How about a 2-syllable word that we have to add ER, EST? Okay? We woke up early today. Early is 2 syllables. Early. We woke up early today. But tomorrow, we have to get up even earlier. And Saturday, we have to get up the earliest. Okay? Early, earlier, earliest. Positive, comparative, superlative. Okay? Moving on. Rule number 2. Most 2-syllable words and all 3 or more syllable words, you don't add an ER or EST, you add the word more or most in front. So let's get a word like quickly. Quickly is positive. More quickly is comparative. And most quickly is superlative. Okay? Or even a word like rapidly. Rapidly, positive. More rapidly, comparative. Most rapidly, superlative. Okay? Moving on. Rule number 3, and I mentioned this in big bold letters with lesson 2. Do not combine ER or EST with more and most. You do not mix the two. It is incorrect to say something like, she walks more faster than Tim. You don't need that. That is incorrect. Completely incorrect. You don't mix more, which is comparative, and faster, which is comparative already. You just need one comparative form. Now, you wouldn't say more fast. More fast is also incorrect. She walks more fast than Tim. Also completely incorrect, because the adverb fast happens to have a comparative form that has an ER. And if it's made up of an ER or an EST, you need to take out that more and put in that ER or that EST. How do you know if it has an ER? Well, if you already know that it goes with an EST like fastest, If it goes with one, it has to go with the other. So the correct form of this would be she walks faster than Tim. This is correct. Okay? Rule number 4. In talking about not things that are more or most, which is a greater comparative form or greater superlative form, in words like less or least that you want to talk about qualities or actions that are less rather than more, you want to use less for comparative and least for superlative. She walks often. Billy walks less often. Carol walks the least often. Okay? And last but not least, let's go over the regular forms of some adverbs. Gotta change the font here real quick. Bump it up to a 20. There we go. I think I mentioned some of these before, but just in case you missed those notes, we're going to be moving from positive over to comparative, over to superlative, since I can't make a table here. Well is the positive form, better is the comparative form, and best is superlative. Badly is positive, worse is comparative, and worst is superlative. Little is positive, less is comparative, and least is superlative. Much positive, more comparative, most superlative. And finally, far positive, farther comparative, and farthest is superlative. And that wraps up lesson 4, which concludes our grammar lesson for this video. So again, if you have any questions whatsoever, look back at the video, make sure you understand the concepts, make sure you've taken notes, screenshots. Definitely recommend notes as a greater form of reinforcement than just simply taking screenshots. But of course, do whatever works with you as a learner, and I am always here to answer your questions. So again, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask me via private message on Classcraft. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Be sure to hit the like button at the bottom of this video and hit subscribe to my channel, where hopefully the videos are now showing up. I'm Mr. G. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.